I'm late. Welcome to today's video, where we're going to be doing the Q&A, which I frankly completely forgot about. And with that, let's start with the very first question from Chance401, which is, why did you forget the Q&A? And honestly, it's really, really simple. Number one, it's because I'm an idiot and I can't keep track of time. And number two, there's just been a whole lot going on. I've been pretty overwhelmed, to be totally honest with you. And because of that, it just slipped my mind, and then I was going through my stuff that I needed to do for this week, and I was like, oh shit. So, yeah, I know I'm usually kind of late with these sometimes, but generally speaking, I've got other stuff I'm working on, and I know it's there, but this time around, I just forgot, so my bad. Anyways, let's move into some real questions. The first is from Robbie the Seal, and they say, if game developers who acted immature, e.g. decided to ban you from their Discord server, came to you and apologized, would you forgive them? This is the easiest question that I think I've got on here all day, and the answer is, yeah, of course I would. If we, tear down the mask for a second here, and I mean, that's almost sort of the point of these Q&As, I don't have this, rent-free living space of people that I hold all of these grudges against when it comes to a lot of these games, and the reality of the day is that the vast majority of the time I cover a game, I talk about it once, and then it never gets brought up ever again. And because it's really just sort of a footnote in my day, I don't worry too much about it. And when people get mad at me and they say a bunch of stuff, a lot of the time I just won't respond, I won't deal with it, and I'll move on to the next thing. It doesn't mean that there aren't times where I take those things and I put them into a Daily Dose of Stupid, for example, in order to continue to basically just profit off of people having pointless meltdowns over one person not liking their game. But the point is that for every single one of these developers that gets mad at me and they're upset and they do a bunch of stupid stuff, they're going to be remembering me and what I did a lot longer than I'm going to be remembering them and their game. And if we're going to be totally real, if somebody came to me in my Discord DMs, for example, and said, hey, I'm from X game and I did Y, and sorry for that, I'll probably not even know what they're talking about. My memory in of itself is already pretty bad, and so my ability to not only remember which game it's from and who these people are and what they did, all of it just doesn't really matter. Life is too short to hold grudges on people that I literally don't even know. I have no idea who these people are. I don't know what they do in their day-to-day. I don't know how long they've worked on this game. I don't know if they wanted to extort people for money or if they just genuinely wanted to make a good game and they weren't very good at it. I'll never know any of these things, and I don't need to in order to criticize somebody's game. In the same way that despite the fact that I am making a game, I don't think that you need to create a game to criticize games, otherwise game reviewing sites and people literally wouldn't exist, which would be a pretty bad thing. I also don't think that you need to completely understand all of someone's extenuating circumstances as to why something isn't fun. If it's not fun, then that's just sort of the end of the story. And whether or not it's testing, or they spent 30 hours on it, or they spent 3,000 hours on it, it doesn't matter. What matters is an enjoyable video game, and if I play something and it's not fun, and worst of all, if it's not fun and packed with microtransactions and says they're in a quote-unquote testing phase, well, I've already said my piece on this 100 times. If your game is in testing, then you shouldn't be selling people stuff. And the second that you do start selling people stuff, that's when you open yourself up to the most amount of criticism possible. Because in my eyes, the second that you have introduced microtransactions, your game is out and you are open to criticism. You don't have to agree with that, that's fine, but that's the way that I look at things, and that's the expectation on this channel. Moving forward, we had a question from Lincoln SA227 who says, will you do a video on Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta? I talked about this shortly when I did my video on Metal Gear Solid 3, the original one, as far as I remember, but some of my opinions have changed since then, and the short answer here is honestly, probably not. Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, from what I understand, is more of a remaster than it is a remake. And with that, I mean it's mostly just a graphical upgrade with obviously some options to improve the controls and whatnot, but overall, the game itself is all but identical, which is fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just someone that doesn't think that remasters need to be made when they're not necessary. In this case, the Metal Gear Solid collection literally came out not too long ago, all things considered, and in that you could buy Metal Gear Solid 3, which is where I played it. And because of that, I feel absolutely no reason to go replay the game again, but with prettier graphics. And I definitely don't want to be paying full price for a video game that I've already played just to make the graphics a little bit better. MGS3 is a great game. I recommend that people buy the MGS collection instead of Delta because, well, it's cheaper. I'm glad that people that wanted this remaster got it and can play it, but I'm just not on board, so I don't have any plans to. The next is from Don Quixote PM, who says, Q&A, will you play Gravedigger again? If I'm correct, when you first played it, it was in a very early state. The game is now launched and not in beta. Well, I honestly am not entirely sure how much I agree with the very early state, but I do have plans to revisit Gravedigger because I've seen a lot of comments about it, especially after I played games like Centaura and Entrenched and all that kind of stuff. There were a ton of people talking about how my Gravedigger video was outdated, how they changed a bunch of stuff to be better, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, I also ended up seeing that a lot of the stuff that I didn't like appears to have not been addressed, which, I mean, that's fine. I am not the person who's making the game, and it's not my vision of the game, it's the person behind it, but that also means that I'm likely to not have as much fun as I otherwise would have. But regardless, the short answer to this is yes, I plan on revisiting the game at some point. I'm not entirely sure when that will be. It'll probably be sometime this month, but whenever I make commitments like that, they tend not to pan out. So don't quote me on that, but that's the expectation right now. In a similar vein, Lizard Jedi says, will you go back to Deepwoken for Verse 3 content, and for Hallowtide these next couple weeks? Well, I'll tell you, I certainly don't really have any interest to go back for the Halloween event right now, so that is definitely on the back burner. But whenever Deepwoken eventually gets around to putting out Layer 3, along with any other stuff that I can reasonably convince myself that it's actually worth going back to play the game again, I'll probably do so. I know a lot of people that are on this channel live and breathe Deepwoken, and so they're always like, when are you going back? When are you going back? When are you going back? Well, as I've mentioned probably 100 times by this point, I've sort of exhausted my enjoyment for Deepwoken a lot after going for W rank and achieving that goal, and so I haven't really had too many inclinations to go back. And that got soured even further, to be totally honest with you, when I did go back for some of the other stuff and the updates were just half-baked and felt like they'd phoned it in and weren't even trying. And so at that point I was like, well, I should probably just tap out because I'm just going to be disappointed going forward, so what's the point? I've said it 100,000 times and I'll say it 100,000 more times. I think that Deepwoken's weekly update structure is incredibly self-destructive from the game. I don't know if they're still using that or if they've finally figured out that that's not a good idea. I have an understanding from Archmage, who I've talked to about it, who said that work ethic and stuff like that is a big reason for the weekly updates and not just because that's the way it is, but also if they didn't have it that way, then things wouldn't get done within a timely manner. But obviously I don't have the entire insight into the back end. All I see is that from my perspective, if they're putting out things weekly constantly, it takes away from the time that they could put towards larger content updates that would keep people like myself more invested in the game. Because when 300,000 PvP weapons and PvE weapons get added every other week, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, well, I don't really care. Broken build number 452 with whatever the new legendary weapon is doesn't really appeal to me, and if I have to grind the same boss that I've already fought 1,000 times, 1,000 more times to get this new thing, yeah, I'm gonna pass. But really, I think you get the idea. When there's stuff that I think is worthy to return for, I will, and if there isn't, then I won't. Simple as that. This was an interesting one from Swordeaser, which is the best life advice that you've taken to heart. I'm actually going to give two answers to this. One is life advice that I've gotten that I've taken to heart, and the other is life advice that I would give to other people that I think they should take to heart because it's really important. Anyways, as for advice that I've gotten, it honestly has a lot to do with talent, and this is something that's hard for a lot of people to learn. It's also something that's hard to accept sometimes, but it's also reality. And that reality is that everyone is good and bad at different things, and in a lot of those things, you're just going to have people who are more talented than you, no matter how hard you work at it. Innate talent is 100% a real thing, and there are some people out there who can just do things in their sleep that would take other people tens of hours to accomplish. Now that said, it doesn't mean that hard work is pointless by any stretch of the imagination, because hard work can get you pretty far. And from what I've heard from figures in my life, and from my own experience, I can tell you that there are kind of tiers to this system in a lot of ways. There are people who are very talented but don't work hard at all, and obviously they can cap out, and somebody who does work hard can match them relatively easily. Then you have people who aren't talented at all but do work hard, and once again, they can generally get to the same level as a talented person who doesn't work at whatever their craft is. But when things get out of hand, it's when you have talented people who do work hard, who will blow people who aren't talented out of the water every single day of the week, and you have absolutely no hope of matching them. This is a reality in life. It's something that if you haven't come to terms with it yet and you haven't seen it yet, trust me, you will. And if you don't, I have great news for you. You're probably the talented one, and you better damn make sure you're making use of those talents. Overall though, the point of me telling you all of this is that trying to measure yourself up to other people all the time is never going to work out, because you're never going to have a total understanding of what that person has gone through and how much they've truly worked towards whatever they're attempting to accomplish. So in my case, the easiest example that I can give to people is when it comes to color guard. Color guard is a hard sport, and it's something that if you're not innately good at, you're going to have to put a lot of work into it. And so that's where I come in. I am not innately good at color guard. I'm not innately good at dance. I'm not innately good at spinning things. And so because of that, I have to work hard at those things. And not only that, but my memory is mega ass. And so when I learn things, I forget them pretty quickly. And so I have to rep them over and over and over and over again. And over the years that I've been doing this activity, I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've seen extremely talented people that work really hard that I could never hope to measure up to. And I've seen the kinds of people who are talented and don't work at it and still blow me out of the water. And it's frustrating. But once you come to terms with the fact that the only thing that you can do is for yourself, and you're never going to be able to affect the skill set or abilities of anyone else, that's when you'll start being able to be just a much happier person in general. Speaking of being a much happier person in general, here's the advice from me rather than other people in my life. And that advice is, if you ever have something important to tell someone under any circumstances, never do it under a text medium under any circumstances. This is probably obvious to plenty of you, but I'm sure there are a lot of young people in my audience and they rely on technology a lot, and that's really what it comes down to. Do not text important things to people if you can call them or talk to them in person. It doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. If you think that something to you is important and you need to discuss it with someone, don't send a wall of text. Don't even send a small text. If anything, send them a text talking about how you want to talk to them, either in person or over the phone. Because text as a medium is extremely flawed, it can lead to a ridiculous amount of misunderstandings, and it can put you in holes that you simply cannot dig yourself out of because you can't explain yourself, because it's so easy to just send a text, block someone, move on, who knows. Trust me, it's not worth it. Talk to people. Anyways, moving on, Elixir4557 says, along your career path, how many times has it felt like it's over? Or why am I even doing this? And how did you overcome this? This is a bit of a deep question, along with the previous one. The amount of times that I've thought it's over, honestly, I don't think that's ever directly popped up. Now, the other one, as to why am I even doing this, yeah, that plenty of times. I think a lot of the time that pops up when I'm just sitting there and I don't have any ideas, and I'm looking at my ideas list and all of them suck, and I'm like, why am I even here? What am I doing? Roblox? Really? That's what we're doing right now? And I'm looking at the front page of games and it's just like drop a poop simulator and skibbity riz toilet game, and I'm just like, oh my god, really? I'm a 25-year-old guy and this is what I'm doing with my afternoon? Like, you've got to be kidding me. Now, in terms of how did I overcome this, well, I can't totally say that I have, if we're being real, but most days when I have thoughts like that, I just have to get to work. Recording and editing videos, generally speaking, is a fair bit of work. It takes all of my focus, and if my focus is on making a video, then it's not on my internal monologue. So that's really what it comes down to. Yeeter6185 says, can we get more of Kitty? Thank you. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Guess who's a kitty? Oh, look at the cat. Hello. Hello. Are you sunbathing? Are you sitting in the sun? Is this a good spot, Fuffy Fuff? Oh, you're trying to attack me. Oh, you're trying to attack me. Why would you try to attack me? Boop, 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 boop. She doesn't like that. She doesn't like when I boop her, but she can't do anything about it. Say hi, kitty. Say hi. Hello. Say hi to Yeeter. Yeah, Yeeter wanted to see you, Fuff Fuff. You're the best. Nugget8606 says, when will you do a live stream where you watch all seasons of Skibbity Toilet, Ab Blood, TS would unironically be Sigma and Peak Unk Rose? Oh my god. Remember that question 2 questions ago? Random Guy 45154 says, do you have a game or multiple games that you've 100%ed? Plenty of games. Generally speaking, if I really like a single player game that I play especially, then I'll go out of my way to 100% it just out of the principle of things. In terms of recent memory, before the launch of Battlefield 6, I was playing a lot of the Batman Arkham games again, so I went through and I 100%ed Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City, which I can tell you, Arkham City is a complete nightmare. Catwoman Top of the World Extreme, if you know, you know. And I was in the process of doing Arkham Knight and trying to get all the achievements and whatnot for that, but then Battlefield 6 came out and it basically sidetracked all of that. So I haven't gotten around to finishing that one. I got very far through. I ended up getting 240% on the save file, which was pretty fun. Ironically enough, it's not the first time that I got 240% on the save file for Arkham Knight, because initially I played all of the Arkham games on the Epic Games launcher because I got them all for free. But there was a Humble Bundle thing not too long ago that had a bunch of WB games, and in that was the Arkham series on Steam, which I didn't have it there, which is one of the reasons that I went through and was getting all the achievements and playing through the games again. So I got 240% twice now, so I guess I have 480% technically on Arkham Knight. But regardless, that was definitely the most recent thing. I've 100%ed both of the Origami games. I've technically 100%ed Ark Survival Evolved. That game someday might get its own video, oh good lord. And honestly, I'm sure if I just scrolled through my Steam, I'd find plenty more games that I 100%ed. But generally speaking, if I talk about a game a lot and I think that it's really good, then I'll probably have 100%ed it. And then the last question that we have is from Wicked Paws, and it says, greeting Eclipse, how are you and how's development going? Well, I'm doing okay. As for the development, I put this on here mostly because I've been kind of radio silent for a while, and that's for good reason. To keep transparency as 100% open as possible, the development of the game has been pretty much just a complete disaster over the last couple months. You see, the initial intention of the original test that we did, where I announced the working on of the game, was to basically just iron out and find a whole bunch of bugs that we knew we were going to find, fix them, and then start moving on to making more content and finishing up the game, because at that time, we knew that we were relatively close to getting a lot of stuff feature complete. Unfortunately, what we ended up learning through that test, and something that I'm surprised we didn't run into more obviously earlier, but to be real with you, I think we ended up needing to do something like that in order to find a lot of this stuff anyway, was that the entire game effectively had to be recoded from the ground up. All of the systems had to be reworked. This is something that I think I've talked about before, but I'm just saying it for a second time now. And because of that, it's been pretty demoralizing, to be totally real. And I, in terms of the coding department, haven't been able to do basically jack shit for a while, as my brother does his fucking voodoo magic, recoding basically the entire game. Because I think I've said this before, but my brother is the main scripter for the game. He does all of the ground up scripting, and I am definitely an auxiliary scripter in that sense. I don't really work on a lot of that stuff. And so once all those systems are in place and we can start moving over old content onto the new systems, then I'll be able to help. But right now we're trying to iron out and make sure that all of these new ground up systems are working. Most importantly, the hit detection. I know there have been some people that have talked on the game's Discord server, and they're like, hit detection shouldn't take this long. And I agree with you in the fact that hit detection shouldn't take this long if we didn't care and we didn't want it to be good and we just wanted to throw out something that, oh, it's good enough, whatever, moving on. But the reality is that in of itself is probably the most important thing in the entire game, and so if we have to run through 30 systems to try to figure out which one is the best, that's more important than trying to just throw out something that works good enough so that way we hit a release deadline. My game is never going to be something that I just chuck something out to meet a release deadline, because that's exactly how you get a whole bunch of these broken, disastrous games that are on just not even on the Roblox platform, just in general. So yeah, we're working on that stuff right now, obviously, and unsurprisingly. The other thing is that this is both my and my brother's second job, and in recent times, honestly, probably more like my third job, because I've been trying to work really hard on my second channel. And because of that, we don't have the time to be putting into this that a lot of other people do. We also like to take breaks and have lives and do other stuff. And so something that would ordinarily take a professional Roblox developer who has 8 hours a day to work on this, when we have 2, obviously that's going to take like 4 times as long. With the release of Battlefield 6, we've both been playing that a fair bit, and that's also stalled development. But once all of this stuff hopefully sort of cools off and we can get back into the swing of things, we should be back under control. If you want a direct update on where we're at the very moment of me talking about this, we're trying to get the world completely functional with all of its systems and gimmicks intact, so that way we can launch another test sometime relatively soon for probably 7 to 8 hours. And with that, we're going to test to make sure everything works. And we're also going to, most importantly, make sure that the hit detection is functional. And once we know that everything works and the hit detection is functional and the server won't crash or shake itself to pieces from any sort of memory leaks or other problems, then we're going to be able to move everything else over. And then once again, as those things get moved, we might do intermittent testing to make sure that those things work as we get them working. Once all of the stands and content has been moved over, that's when we have to get back to working on saving and moving over systems like the inventory and the crafting system and the leveling system. All of that stuff, like I said, right now is kind of in limbo, and we have the bones for it, but it just needs to be moved over to all of the new framework that we've created that ideally will be a lot more stable and functional than the old stuff. Anyways, sorry for just speaking jargon at you. I did my best to explain it the best I can, and I already know there's going to be a bunch of armchair developers in the comments talking about how I don't know what I'm talking about, and you're right, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm never going to come on here and be like, I am the end-all, be-all decoding and know exactly what I'm talking about, because that's just not reality. But even if I don't know everything about coding, what I do know about is the current status of my own game and why we're doing the things that we're doing. So if you are going to go into the comments and tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of the way that we're running the project, well, I don't really have anything to say to you. Well, if you've got all the know-how and you can do it better, by all means, please do. The whole reason that I'm even making a game to begin with was because I got tired of all of these games extorting players and just not doing a very good job. So if you can do a good job, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to play a game that does a good job. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent at this point, and I try not to engage with a lot of those people who are just there to talk shit. Regardless, that's going to be it for today's Q&A. So naturally, if you enjoyed it, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.